Hi, everybody. It is Wednesday, August 12th, and I'm Dr. Vanessa. I'm a naturopathic doctor at Brio Integrative Health for those who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet. And today we're going to talk about digital detox. This is a part of a larger theme that we're doing for the month of August on detoxification, and also there'll be some tidbits on how IV therapy can potentially support that. So I'm currently doing a 10-day metabolic detox with a group of wonderful patients and new friends of Brio with Dr. Karen. And I thought, why not expand on the subject of detoxification? So we've been talking lots about our organs of elimination. So again, that's the liver, the lungs, the kidney, the skin, lymph, etc. But what about other things that contribute to bodily health? Um, External influences. So reducing congestion or clutter in our organs, and shout out to Dr. Karen, who presented just this past Monday uh, on clutter. She aptly named her talk the health changing magic of tidying up. Such a fun title. Um, and be sure to check that out if you're into Marie Kondo and some of her concepts. So, reducing congestion or clutter inside the body is a similar idea to unplugging uh, the proverbial electric organ. Um, Electricity is a wonderful invention, and we are certainly in a hyper digital age where there is Wi Fi um, readily available, and I've heard of kids being punished with things like um, no electronics. So having electronics being withheld. So things, of course, like TV and video games, but maybe an iPad or smartphone. Also, those things allow us to connect on social media, which is so important for communication, but expression and sharing, of course. Um, it's allowing us, the doctors at Brio, to give these little informational sessions online so that we can reach more people. So, EMFs, electromagnetic field, or also sometimes it's called electro smog, electronic pollution, literally, is something that functional medicine is increasingly aware of and its impact on our overall health. According to Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt, he's one of the foremost experts in neurobiology and actually a certified building biologist. How cool is that? He speaks very passionately on the threat that EMF pollution is posing to our health. And he thinks it's one of the most common overlooked things in the healing puzzle. So, electrosmog is something that should be considered, especially in chronic illness, when every other avenue has been explored. Um, Things like parasitic infections, things like Lyme, nutrition deficiencies, spinal misalignment, all these different types of complementary and alternative practitioners have their own ideas about what might be contributing to symptoms and ill health. And one thing that all of us inevitably are exposed to is electro smog or excess EMFs. So because of how we often use personal electronic devices, it's really our brains and our neurological tissues, like cell phone and having our screen right in front of our faces. Those are the tissues that are getting the most concentrated exposure. And then also, depending on where you store your device on your body, you know, how many of us now don't leave the house with our mobile phones, um, in a back pocket of pants or the front pocket. And there's been links to infertility or fertility issues with men. It's something, a simple thing to maybe change if you are having trouble conceiving from the male perspective, is to keep your mobile phone away from your pelvic organs, and females as well, of course. Also for females, there can be a habit of storing the phone maybe in a pocket in our upper chest. For a while, there was even sports bras that allowed you to slip your phone just in a front pocket, really close to your heart, and a bunch of lymph tissues when we're talking about the upper body. And I think athletic apparel designers have tuned into that and stopped creating that convenient pocket just because of the unknown health implications. And I saw a documentary a few years ago on EMFs. I can't remember the name right now, but there was a couple of people who spoke on the connection between where they stored their phone and where they developed cancer, actually. So one businessman, for example, ended up developing a tumor on the side of his head, on the same side that he would hold his cell phone that he was constantly connected to. And a woman who would use one of those sports bras with the pocket up here developed breast cancer, almost an exact outline the size of her phone. So some may say that's a coincidence, but they were really convinced that they had to change their habits after those diagnoses. So far, the evidence is still being gathered, and no one's really been able to say conclusively, there's no kind of agreement. There's certainly different camps that say absolutely, it's contributing or it has an effect. And even with preliminary studies, this is something that we should be cautious of and do prevention work around. Whereas another camp of people are like, no, this is absolute nonsense. Like, it's not a concern. We already have so many things to be anxious about. This is not one of them. So people who have conditions involving brain or neurological tissues, sleep quality, and mental health might want to still rule in or rule out exposure to EMF as a contributing factor or an aggravating factor to your symptoms. Since technological growth shows no signs of stopping, and the amount of EMF exposure is just exponentially climbing in our lives, it would be necessary for us to keep tabs on how much of this stuff is in our lives and whether we have any opportunities to limit exposure or just to increase awareness of how ubiquitous it is, and whether that's okay with us and that's okay for our individual bodies. So some studies have already shown that radio frequencies, so RF, and electromagnetic fields, EMFs, can induce changes in our central nervous systems, the nerve cells, and it can affect um, cell apoptosis or programmed cell death. And it can also change the function of the nerve myelin. So that's the insulation, the sheath around the nerve cell, and affect things like ion channels, which are dictated by different electrolytes in our bodies, different mineral complexes. And generally, some of these studies have shown that RF and EMF act as a stress source in all living creatures. Because of our high water content and the salts dissolved in our bloodstream, we are electroconductive, and so we'll respond to electrical stimulus. So again, while the possible biological effects of RF and EMF exposure have not been solidly proven, and there isn't, a wall of scientific data on the biological hazards that they pose, it's still something that I am growing cautious of. And for any of you who've been attracted to this lecture, I'm curious about whether you have noticed any differences, especially for those who have lived in the generation before, regular computer use, before mobile phones, whether even when you go to the country or go camping and you feel better, could that be because of your distance from a concentration of Wi-Fi signals and EMF? Now I just wanted to touch on the topic of social media use or electronic use and loneliness, and how that might be another area. So there's, the physical ailments that we may feel from the physiological impacts, but also the mental, emotional impact of always being tethered to a device. So it was shown, sadly, that only 50% of Americans feel like they're engaging in meaningful social interactions on a regular or daily basis. Does this ring true for you? Do you feel like that you get enough daily, high quality human interaction? Certainly, it could be mediated through technology, through things like FaceTime and video chats, but are you getting enough human contact? Do we sometimes get lazy and choose to have a Skype date versus make the effort to see someone in person? And I know that COVID-19, the coronavirus pandemic, definitely is impacting your freedom and choice with this matter, but just something to consider, whether we've gotten so used to the social distancing that we've fallen short of socially distanced hangouts that that nourish us, that enhance that connection that we get from the screen time we have with our loved ones. Something that relationship experts often joke about is that you'll know how long a couple has been dating based on how they behave, say in a restaurant. So the couple that's, just falling in love and dating, they'll often be the ones that are actually having conversation, that are, asking lots of questions and trying to get one another, understand, build relationship. Whereas the couple that's been together for a lot longer will kind of take this time for granted, and they'll both be, checking their email, their social media, just with their phone on the table, not even talking to each other even at times. Another example where there could be a harmful effect is when you're nursing your child. I study a lot of psychosomatic therapy on the side, and how a nursing infant longs for not just their mother's milk, but also that attunement that a mother has with her child as she's providing food through her body and really connecting to the child's needs and responding versus using it as downtime to catch up on emails, on notifications and things. And I'm not saying that, I'm not judging that at all, because I know or I've seen how busy life can be for new parents. Just wanted to bring that up as something just to be aware of, that sometimes when we have an opportunity to connect with others, that we're choosing to do other things instead of being with them in the moment. And that's all I'll say about that. So one thing that always comes up when we're talking about digital detox and the potential harm of EMFs is electromagnetic hypersensitivity. And this is really well illustrated by the character of Chuck, or Charles McGill, on the show Better Call Saul. So he plays the character foil to his younger brother, who's kind of the anti-hero or main character of the show. They're both attorneys, and Chuck, it's revealed later, has electromagnetic hypersensitivity. And he suffers symptoms when he can feel electrical devices in around his home. And so he's chosen to live quite an extreme lifestyle where he's off the grid, uses like a gas lantern, doesn't turn on the lights, has to wrap himself in a space blanket essentially when just fetching the paper from outside, and it's really disabling. And of course, his brother, doesn't believe in this electromagnetic hypersensitivity and tries not to indulge it. And there's points in the show where it's kind of tested, where without him knowing, a doctor leaves a cell phone on in the hospital room, and he's totally normal. So when he thinks or feels that there's EMFs, he gets really strong physical symptoms, but it's not 100% consistent. So electromagnetic hypersensitivity is considered a psychophysical condition. So it's when our thoughts are affecting the way we feel physically. And people who suffer from EMF hypersensitivity can have a wide range of symptoms, from headaches to feeling itchy and uncomfortable in your skin, blurred vision, to heart palpitations. And the World Health Organization does counsel physicians to focus on the physical ailments. Whenever someone is in distress or discomfort who presents to me, I would want to offer them some sort of relief, even if I didn't know what exactly was causing their symptoms. I would try to get to the root cause, but especially when there's a belief that there's a connection with electronic devices, that exposure can be hard to control. So finding a bit of symptom relief would be the first thing to focus on. And, you know, the radiation, the radio frequency signals are indeed there. It's just disputed whether they have an effect on us physically. You can measure the radiation from personal home testing meters and equipment. And they often measure both the high frequency EMFs, the low frequency radio waves, and even low frequency microwaves. So just ending this conversation on reducing exposure to RF and EMF as a way to detoxify from external influences that might be affecting your overall function. What can you do if you don't want to resort to, wearing a space blanket, living in the woods? What can you do to ward off the potentially damaging effects of chronic EMF exposure? So you can invest in things like grounding and shielding devices. They can take the form of an earthing mat or even bed pads. Protective clothing. So sometimes it's made with silver fiber, and bed canopies to protect your sleeping space, your sanctuary, even curtains to block out if you choose to make your home more EMF friendly. You might invest in curtains or even paint that can reduce the background EMF from smart meters, Wi-Fi, if you're living in a condo, what your neighbors are using in their home, just create a physical kind of divide. And a simple thing would be to just keep all mobile devices, it's recommended at least 30 centimeters away from your body. So that's the length of your standard ruler. I might have one here. Yes. So 30 centimeters. There we go. And so if you're using your cell phone, that would mean using headphones, for example. And then you could always use the airplane mode or even turn it off when it's not in use, and to keep it off your body. So maybe you have it in a bag that you're carrying with a lining that limits the transmission of the EMF. A more extreme measure might be to turn off electricity at night. So to turn off the circuit breaker, or even just to power down the power bar that's connected to a bunch of non-essential devices. This also can help to save energy. If your devices are still equipped with an Ethernet port, I just noticed that my computer, I think for 2 iterations now, hasn't had an Ethernet port, and it only works with Wi-Fi, but is to use broadband internet. And at home, some people, actually quite a few people, still have a home phone, not just a cell phone. So to choose a landline versus a cordless phone when you're at home. So if this topic is of interest to you, please comment or like this video and share it with your friends or family. By no means am I an expert, and I'm just starting to investigate the contribution of radio frequencies and EMFs to the less than perfect health of some of my patients who have chronic illnesses that always improve but never get 100%, and whether the technological age is what's preventing them from completing the full healing process. I can definitely expand on this topic as I learn. I'd be happy to share with all of you. So let me know if that would be of interest to anyone to have a follow-up session on this topic. And with that, I'll say good afternoon and goodbye, and thank you for joining me today on this Facebook Live.